Today was day 2 in Donna Adelson's trial, and we heard from a witness who we have never heard from before, even if you've been following this case for the past 11 years, and that is Robert Adelson. His testimony today was just mind-blowing. It was earth-shattering. He was dropping bombs, and we're going to get to that. We're going to play for you about 10 minutes of his testimony, which is really all it takes. This 10 minutes is the most significant part so far of the prosecution's case. It was probably more worth it for the prosecution, these 10 minutes, than the entire 8 hours of today's testimony. But still, we have to get through the other testimony as well, and we're going to get to Robert Adelson, trust me, by the end of this video. But first, let's get through the other witnesses that testified. So we had Jason Newland testify. Jason Newland was an investigator in this case, and the reason why they had to call him at this point was because of an issue that came up after day 1, which was on Friday, which Judge Everett got very upset about. And that was the fact that the divorce file, as we've spoken about previously on this channel, the divorce file is a question about whether it's going to be admitted or not. Should the entirety of the divorce file get admitted? Should only portions of the divorce file get admitted? And this is what was being argued back and forth between the prosecution and the defense. And the ruling of Judge Everett was that if the prosecution can show that Donna Adelson knew about certain pleadings that were filed in the divorce proceedings, then those parts of the divorce file get admitted. And since apparently there was some confusion between the defense and prosecution which portions of the divorce file will get admitted, so the prosecution had to go back over the weekend and figure out exactly which portions of the divorce file are referenced in Donna Adelson's emails, which would show that she actually knew about these specific pleadings. So that's really what Jason Newland was there for in the beginning of the day, just to show that these portions, and again, the significant portions of the divorce file, which the prosecution really cares about, is number one, the issue of relocation and how much Donna Adelson felt that was a non-negotiable issue, which was then lost by Wendy Adelson. You can imagine what type of reaction Donna Adelson could have had because of that. So that was number one. They had to establish that Donna Adelson didn't know about that petition for relocation and the fact that it was denied with prejudice, which means that it cannot be relitigated. And number two was the grandma motion, which they call the grandma motion, which was Dan Markel's request of the court to not allow Donna Adelson around his children without supervision because he was making the allegation that she was defaming him. She was putting him down in front of his own children. So there was that portion of the motion as well. And there was also something that came out very interesting from Jason Newland, is that there was an accounting. I mean, this is really gets really freaky. That there's an accounting that Donna Adelson kept of every time that Dan Markel left town, left on a business trip or whatever he was leaving town for. She knew exactly when he left town from the time that their first child was born. So this is years before the divorce. She already had records of exactly when he would leave town. A little bit of scary. That's where it gets a little bit off the hinges here. All right. Well, so that's essentially what was brought out. You can see some of the emails and some of the, you can definitely see the feelings that Donna Adelson had towards Dan Markel, the hatred that she had for Dan Markel, and also how much she was involved with this divorce. She was obviously very, very involved, and she most likely knew about everything that was going on in the divorce file. But still, you have to actually show the documents, linking them, showing the nexus, and that's a little bit more of a difficult job. But still, the prosecution was able to bring in a lot of the divorce file, definitely the significant parts of the divorce file. Okay, then Wendy Adelson took the stand. Now, if you saw Wendy Adelson's testimony from before, then this was not too much of a shocker. It was essentially very similar to what we've seen already in the previous trial. So let's just go through it. Wendy Adelson, they spoke about a lot of the divorce file, going through a lot of the divorce, some of the history that she had with Dan Markel when they got married and everything was fine. And then, Dan was a great guy. Danny was a very intelligent person, very smart person. He was climbing the ranks. He was going to be a professor probably one day in Harvard or Yale. And at some point, he did want his kids to start being more religious. So he was taking them to synagogue and he wanted them to eat kosher. She didn't really care for kosher. Initially, they started off not keeping kosher, and now he wanted the kids to only eat kosher, so that at some point they used to eat ham and bacon and now they don't. So so they went through some of that, some of the history of the relationship leading up to the divorce. Now she claims also that this issue, this religious issue, wasn't really a main issue of the divorce. she feels like this was a smaller issue. They really had bigger issues than this, that he was becoming more religious and she wasn't. But okay, that's, again, you have to take her word for it because that's all you have. But I think some people who understand how some of the dynamics works can probably understand that it could be that there's a little bit that was actually a bigger issue than she is actually making it to be. But let's just move on from it, because the point was, everybody agrees at the end of the day, it was a very, very nasty, contentious divorce. So it started with actually the fact that the way that she left him, the way that she just moved out of the house, was when he was out on a business trip. So he just went on a small little business trip and she just disappears with the kids and some possessions. She goes to her own apartment that she had all ready for herself. That's how she left. And we're going to hear a little bit later about when she and Donna wanted to, or through Donna or with Donna, or planning with Donna, when Wendy was going to break the news to Dan about that she decided to move out. So we're going to hear about that a little bit later. But they moved on. The prosecution moved on, asking Wendy Adelson about what Donna Adelson was like in her life. So was she very controlling? Obviously, she was sort of a micromanager in Wendy Adelson's life, and she acknowledged that yes, her mother's a very hands-on, very much a micromanager of her business, of everything that Wendy is doing, and she's controlling in that way. At some point, she also mentioned that Dan Markel threatened her with kidnapping charges because of the way that she left. She just left him with the kids, so he was actually threatening some sort of charges against her for kidnapping. Okay, so then there's also some other issues that came up with how much involved Donna was with Wendy's life. So, for example, one of the things that Donna did is that she pretended to be Wendy herself, contacting certain financial institutions. I mean, this is not a child. This is already an adult, married, and you have the mother pretending to be the daughter so that she can contact financial institutions and whatever she needs to do, open up accounts or close accounts or find out information from the accounts. I mean, it's just, you see the next level here. All right. Then they spoke about some of these issues with the divorce file. So there was this motion that she claims that there was a motion that she filed to enforce the settlement from the divorce, because she was supposed to take her name off the title of the house, and then he was supposed to pay her, and he didn't pay her, so she filed this motion, and then he started making allegations that she didn't facilitate these Skype communications, that they were supposed to Skype, he was supposed to Skype with the kids, and she wasn't arranging that and not allowing him to do it. All right, then moving on to, okay, so basically just laying out how contentious this divorce was. Okay, then moving on to Charlie Adelson. So Charlie Adelson and the joke about the TV. So first, about who Charlie Adelson is. He's, we all know he's this young single guy who's very fast and likes fast cars, and that's the type of person that he is. And about this joke about a TV that he was going to hire a hitman for Wendy, but a TV is cheaper. So yes, he had very bad taste in jokes. Now, she also said that they never used, as far as she's concerned, as far as she knows, TV was never used as a code. And as we already heard in this trial already, and we're going to hear probably more of this, that you can tell that TV was the word that was used as a code between Charlie Adelson and Donna Adelson. But of course, Wendy is feigning ignorance, that she has no idea about TV being used as a code, and she never even heard Donna, her mother, use TV as code for murder. Now, we do know that the TV repairman came to Wendy's house the day of the murder, and it was her alibi. And after that, asking about what happened with that. So she, the repairman came, and he was there for an hour. Why was he there for an hour? Did she know why he was there for an hour? It doesn't make sense that he was there for an hour. Okay, well, she doesn't know anything, and this is just the best of her memory that he was there for an hour. After the TV repairman left, so she did a few things around the house. Then she went to go meet some friends for lunch. But first, before she did meet her friends for lunch, she did have to run a few errands, and one of them to buy some alcohol, which we're going to hear about again probably a little bit later. So she tried to turn down Trescott to get this alcohol, because it was some sort of stock the bar party that she had to buy some bourbon for, some bullet bourbon. And she tried to turn down Trescott because this time she didn't say it was a shortcut. At some of the trials, she said that it was a shortcut. This time she just said she decided to go down Trescott because she just wanted to take that route to the liquor store. And what do you know? There was yellow tape already blocking off the street, and there's a police car, so she had to turn around and exit from Trescott and go down a different way. Now, she was supposed to pick the kids up from school that day, but of course, things got in the way of that, and that didn't happen. She was picked up by the police and was in the middle of giving an interview with the police, and she had to arrange how her kids would get picked up. All right. Now, she said that she did have plans to talk to Dan that morning. They were trading text messages back with each other. She said that she tried to call him, but he didn't answer. They had to talk about the kids and I think maybe some schooling options for the kids. Now, she also knew, this is a very important part, she knew that Dan was supposed to leave to New York the next day. The question really is, how did Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia find out that information? Because they knew that information also. As Luis Rivera testified, they knew that he was leaving the next day. Dan was leaving the next day to go to New York. And this was their last opportunity to do the job, to murder him. And Wendy Adelson knew his schedule. Well, is there some sort of connection? Who told Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia that he was leaving the next day? Well, she doesn't know. She has no idea, right? Would she know if Charlie knew that? She has no idea whether Charlie would know that. But what about Donna? Would Donna know that Dan Markel was leaving? And this is where she tried to say, well, she would know that I had the kids because Donna was always trying to help me. She's a mother that would help me. Yes, she would micromanage me, but she would also help me with the kids, and she would know when I would have the kids, and doesn't automatically mean that he's going to be out of town, but she would probably knew that I had the kids. But as we know from Jason Newland already, Donna Adelson had meticulous records about when Dan was going to be out of town. So most likely the jury's thinking, yeah, Donna Adelson knew that most likely through Wendy, that Dan Markel was going to be leaving town. So most likely there is a connection between Wendy telling Donna and then Donna knowing this information and using it to relay the information to either Charlie, and then Charlie to Katie, and then Katie to Sigfredo Garcia, etc., in order for Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia to know that Dan was going to be leaving town the next day. So there still is a level of distance from Wendy, even if Wendy may have told Donna, and this is just because Donna's always kept records about where Dan is. So not necessarily solid proof that Wendy was part of this conspiracy, but it's, again, the connection here to say that Donna didn't know about it. Of course, Donna knew about it. All right, but let's move on. So Dan left a message actually gave a message to Wendy Adelson that he was going to the gym between 9:15 and 9:30, and they had some conversation. The conversation was about the kids' schooling. That's what they had to speak about. And then Charlie had a conversation with Wendy at 9:30 in the morning. And what was that about? Well, according to Wendy, that was about the TV. That was just about the TV, nothing else. Not about Dan's schedule, not about anything else, but it was about the TV. And she said that it could be that, maybe I mentioned that Dan's leaving, like, we're brothers and sisters. I may be telling him just because we're just talking. So it is possible that I told him that, but it was mostly about the TV repair. Okay. All right, so we spoke about the Stock the Bar party. It came up again in the direct examination, and she went to get the bullet bourbon because that's what they wanted. And she went to ABC Fine Wine and Spirits around 12:49 p.m., then went to lunch, and then was picked up by the police to give an interview. She moved from Tallahassee right after the murder, and as she was moving out of Tallahassee, and she was leaving Tallahassee, and of course her parents were taking her, she gets a call from Craig Ason, the detective on this case. And he wanted to take the kids' DNA. And this was about when she said that she was already 4 hours out of Tallahassee. So she was already on the way back to Miami or Coral Springs, and it was already 4 hours away from Tallahassee. And then Craig decided that he wanted to get the DNA from the kids. And then the call just broke up. It broke up, and she dropped the call, and then that was it. He never followed up getting the kids' DNA. And I did say, again, this is Wendy saying, I did say that he can speak to my lawyer about getting the kids' DNA. Basically, don't talk to me anymore, talk to my lawyer. But he never followed up getting that. And it seems from the prosecution that Craig believes that she faked that the call was breaking up and just hung up the phone. But she claims that, of course, Wendy says, no, that's not what happened. It was breaking up. It was just bad service. Okay. Now, she did text Charlie Adelson that she's very happy that she moved to Miami and that she really hated Tallahassee, did not want to be in Tallahassee. And this is, again, a point of contention that we keep hearing from all these trials, that Wendy was claiming that she was fine with Tallahassee. She was completely fine. She was coming to terms with living in Tallahassee. But the text message to Charlie Adelson said that she was very happy since moving to Miami. She changed the names of her children. That happened she said, a year after Dan was murdered. And then they spoke about Harvey's 70th birthday, the invitation that Donna sent out. Okay. And then also the fact that she did not go to the funeral of Dan Markel, and she did not bring the kids to the funeral of their father. Okay. They were very young. You can make some arguments, whatever. But that was another point that was brought out. Now, it's funny because I actually was wondering, as this was going on, as I was watching it, and I said, I wonder when the last time Wendy Adelson actually spoke to Donna Adelson. This may be the first time that they're meeting in a long time or even talking to each other. And then, what do you know? That was the question that was asked. When was the last time she spoke to Donna Adelson? And that was November of 2023. Now, the last conversation that she had with Donna Adelson, that Wendy Adelson had with Donna Adelson, was in November 2023, right by Charlie Adelson's trial. And Donna wanted Wendy to be supportive of Charlie. Now, what would that mean in Charlie's trial? Your guess is as good as my guess. Be supportive of Charlie's theory, probably. And not throw him under the bus. But Wendy said that's not exactly what happened. She did what she testified to, whatever she testified to, and her mother, Donna Adelson, was not very happy about that at all. Okay. Then there was a number of very strong questions that Georgia Cotton was asking Wendy Adelson about her involvement in this. Did you know that this was going to happen? Did anybody let you know that this is going to happen? Even if you were not involved. Even if you were not involved in the conspiracy, did you know that Dan was going to get murdered? And of course she said no. She had no idea. Did you, by accident, even share some information that would be helpful to people if they were planning and conspiring to kill Dan Markel? And of course she said she can't think of anything that she helped in any way, whether she knew about it or not. Now, also, what was interesting is the fact that when she, in her interview, she was asked a number of questions about who can this possibly be? Who can there be? Which suspects can possibly be on the list of people that would perhaps murder Dan Markel? And here she first said maybe she herself is a suspect. A number of times she said that in the interview that maybe she is a suspect because it's a bad divorce. So that's pretty reasonable that she would understand that she would be a suspect in the case, but she was not treated like a suspect. She was interviewed in a room and spoken to nicely, not arrested or anything like that. Okay. Now, she also, interestingly, gave the police her laptop, which she was supposed to be using for work, because, she said, okay, search my laptop, search my phone. I'm trying to help in any way. You can search whatever you want, right? A lot of times we find this where you have the other person who's saying, look, I have nothing to do with this. Search whatever you want. Search my phone, search my house, search my car, search my laptop. And she said, you can have my laptop. Go ahead, take my laptop and keep it with you, whatever. I don't need that laptop. Well, the question was, what do you mean? You're going to need that laptop because it's your work laptop. If you plan on staying in Tallahassee, you're going to need that laptop because you're a professor. Don't you need that laptop? It's your work laptop. So she's like, well, I wasn't really thinking about work at that time. I was just struck with this tragedy, and that's not exactly what I was thinking. When's the next time I'm going to have to give a lecture and need that laptop? Okay. All right. She also suggested to the police that her parents could have been angry enough to want to kill Dan Markel. And she said, well, there's other people I also mentioned, but yes, I did mention that my parents really did not like Dan Markel. And again, of course, it makes sense if they're going through a contentious divorce. It doesn't automatically mean that every person who goes through a contentious divorce is going to hate the ex-son-in-law so badly that they're going to figure out a way to murder him. But, okay, still helps prosecution to hear that. He also said that maybe Charlie. She said that Charlie is possible that he would actually arrange this murder also, that he could be a suspect. So she did mention that also. And then interestingly is that when she was asked in the interview about whoever did this, do you want them to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law? And she said, yes, absolutely. And then she said, and then was asked, what about if it was your family? And then she said, well, And again, I don't know if this was the exact question or answer, but this was the gist of her answer. It was that, well, I mean, it would be different if I thought it was my brother. So even though she would want anybody who did this to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, well, if it's my brother, maybe I wouldn't want that to happen. Okay. Then she called her mother, which is interesting. She called her mother right in the middle of the interview to break the news to her. And she told her, you need to sit down. You need to sit down. I'm going to tell you something that's very tragic, and you need to be sitting down. And that's when she broke the news to Donna Adelson that Dan was murdered. And she asked if she can put it on speakerphone for her father. But her father, according to the prosecution, the father maybe was in the shower at the time. So why was she putting it on speakerphone? Maybe Charlie was there. She asked her, which the prosecutor asked Wendy, do you know if Charlie was there? That's why you're asking to put it on speakerphone? Well, she had no idea whether Charlie was there. That was her answer. Okay. And then she said, well, did mom take the news well? And she said, no, she was upset. Well, then there's some part of the interview where she said, well, she did take it well. So I guess she did take it well. And then, of course, this was really the kicker, where when Wendy gets off the phone and she says that, number one, her mom handled it pretty well. And number two, that, well, my parents sounded surprised. So I guess that's a relief. Like, they shouldn't be suspects now. So don't even bother, because they were surprised. So you don't have to investigate them. Okay. All right. So that was really the direct examination of Wendy Adelson. And then on cross-examination, some parts came out about that there was this picture on the beach with Katie McVanoa, and Charlie wasn't even there. And there is this subtle idea that the defense is already starting with, that we already saw on day one. We're seeing it again in day two, where it seems that the defense is making the suggestion that it could be that Wendy was really the one behind this and not Donna. We'll see in closing arguments if they actually make that argument, but it seems that they're already trying to plant these seeds where, wait, you're with Katie McVanoa at the beach by yourself. Charlie's not even there. Maybe you're the one who's arranging all this with Katie McVanoa. All right, well, we'll see if they come back to them in closing, but that's something that she brought out. She also spoke about how her mother was such a great mother. Donna Adelson, such a great mother, right? She took good care of you. And she's selfless. She's not selfish. She's selfless. She radiates joy. And she's always there for you. She's paying for stuff. She's taking you on vacations. She's such a great mother, right? So just trying to build up the character of Donna Adelson. She helped you in Tallahassee. She would always run over to you, help you with the kids in Tallahassee. And despite all those nasty emails and the nasty things that Donna said about Dan Markel, she never said that Danny deserved to be harmed. She never said that Danny deserved to be killed. She never actually said that in the email, right? Okay. Then she also made the argument, which is, again, this is the defense attorney, that she made the argument that Jackie Fulford, that, there's a good idea. I mean, when I say make the argument, I mean through Wendy Adelson, obviously, about this $1 million bribe to get Dan Markel to move down to Miami. Now, if Dan Markel was becoming more Jewish, Miami would probably be a better place for him to live and raise his children. There's a lot more Jewish day schools there. There's a lot more kosher food down there, a lot more kosher options, a lot more Jewish options there. There's just a lot more Jews down there. So this whole idea about, Dan Markel was trying to become more religious, and you're trying to relocate, Wendy's trying to relocate to Miami, and Dan just wants to stay in Tallahassee. Well, if Dan really is serious about this whole religious stuff, then it makes a lot more sense to move down to Miami. And then we're going to give him so much money, he can fly back to Tallahassee twice. He only teaches twice a week, so he can fly back there. All right, so that was again brought out. And then there was also this interview that Wendy had with this firm in Miami, where they actually made her an offer. Seemed to be a very nice offer, and she just had to relocate down to Miami. So she was thinking about that. She spoke to Wendy spoke to Dan about this idea about moving down to Miami, and according to Wendy, it was actually a serious consideration for Dan to move down to Miami. He actually tried to get a professorship down there. I'm not sure if this was then or earlier, but she said that was a conversation that they had, and but then at some point later he decided to change his mind, and he's not interested anymore in moving down to Miami. He wants to stay in Tallahassee, and right after that is when. Soon after that was when the motion for relocation was denied with prejudice. But of course, she never intended on taking the kids away from Dan Markel. She never had that intention at all. It was going to be a fair split. We want the best for our children, and children need a mother and a father. So she had no intention of taking the kids away from him for good. Now, there's also this necklace that Donna Adelson apparently gave to Wendy, which says 3 words: never give up, never give up, never give up, or never, never, never give up. So she would reference that, I guess, in some emails and trying to make it look like, we're just reaching for strength during the time like this. Not that you should never really give up, but just, have that strength that your necklace refers to, and just keep fighting, for the good fight, not the bad fight, the good fight. Okay. Now, she also pointed out that, again, this is the defense attorney, that the father was the one who set up the TV repair, not Donna Adelson. And even there was one of the questions that if you would be willing to have an earlier appointment, which they clicked yes. So it's not just that this whole alibi that was created for Wendy Adelson. Even if there would be an earlier appointment, she would have taken it. That's what they said when they set up this appointment. Okay, and then in fact, she also pointed out that Donna was not really the driving force behind your divorce. She actually wanted you to go to counseling, and you told her that you did go to counseling. So you see that Donna was actually trying to keep the marriage together. She was the one who didn't hate Don Markel. But again, it's not going to help that much, because once they're actually going through the divorce, you can tell by the emails that no, she really, really hated him. Okay, well, then the last point was where she tried to set up this idea that Donna really didn't even realize what the judge's order was on the motion for relocation. Meaning Wendy's motion for relocation, which was dismissed with prejudice, which is like one of the strong points of the prosecution, which just got them so upset and so mad into a rage where they just wanted to kill Dan Markel and be able to relocate because no one's going to F with the Adelsons, right? So for that part, Donna, she tried to make the argument that Donna didn't even know that the judge made a ruling about that. And that's why you see some of the emails saying all this about the location, because a lot of the emails that Donna sends are about the relocation, and this is non-negotiable. We have to figure out a way to do this. But once the order became final, then you don't see any further emails from Donna Adelson. So maybe Donna really didn't know that this issue was done. She didn't know that this issue was dead. She didn't know that this was dismissed with prejudice. Maybe you forgot to tell Donna that. Now, obviously, anyone on the jury understands and knows that, of course, Donna knew about it because she was in constant contact with Wendy about everything going on with the divorce. And there's not a chance that for the next month, Wendy didn't tell Donna about this decision, and that Donna only found out about it when it became final, whatever, a month later. So everybody is most likely dismissing that out of hand. But this was the case that the defense was trying to make, that maybe she didn't know that. And then once it became final, she didn't continue with that whole relocation argument. But on redirect, this is where Georgia Cotman showed an email that actually she did know that it was dismissed with prejudice. So it was very clear that she did know what was going on, and she was still pressing the issue very much. So no, that whole thing kind of fell apart on its face. So that was essentially the testimony of Wendy Adelson. And then we moved on to Robert Adelson. And again, this testimony was just as eye-opening. Just really could seal the deal for Donna Adelson. It could. I mean, this is the strongest witness already so far. And we didn't hear about much. We didn't hear about the bump yet. We didn't hear witness and testimony about that. We didn't hear the recorded phone calls with jail calls, the jail snitch. We didn't hear any of that yet. But this is a very, very strong witness for the prosecution. And we never heard from him before. So let's hear, and I'm going to play for you the 10 minutes, which I think is the most important part of his testimony. We're going to play for the 10 minutes. We're going to speed it up a little bit. And we're going to play for you. But first, let's get up to that point in his testimony. So first, Robert Adelson, who is he? He is an ENT. He's the oldest oldest Adelson child. And he said, without a doubt, the leader in the family is Donna Adelson. She is the leader. She controls everybody. She controls everything. And she's very assertive. The father's much more passive, much more going with the flow, which why wouldn't make sense that they're married, because Donna runs everything. And he's like, okay, whatever you want, whatever you say. Yes, dear. Yes, dear. So she's very involved parent, and she has fixed ideas about how each person in the family should live their life. She has fixed ideas about what career you should go into. He's a doctor after all, right? Wendy's a lawyer. Charlie's a doctor. So she was a very strong reason why Robert Adelson became a doctor. Now, I'm not sure if he regrets it or not, but okay, that was part of her fixed idea about how people should live their lives. Also, very clearly, which a lot of people know from behind the scenes in this case, is that she was very assertive about which relationships her children should have, which is why she had a list of men for Wendy, which she already pre-screened and pre-approved before Wendy would go out with them. So she had ideas about who Robert Adelson should also marry. Okay. She is much more involved with Wendy, to a lesser degree with Charlie, and even a lesser degree with Robert. Charlie generally needed more attention, and Charlie relied on Donna Adelson a lot. He relied on his mother a lot, and she would help run the practice. Right? She managed the practice a lot, especially when Charlie bought it 2012, which seems to be that he sold it back to Harvey in 2015. But okay, not sure exactly what happened there. Maybe he just couldn't run it himself. So, and here's where another part, a very strong, important part of his testimony that came out, was the question of, would Donna just do something if somebody asked them to do it? Maybe this is just like a grandmother, a mother who's just going to do whatever their son says. The son says, make checks to Katie McVanoa, just sign them. Don't ask questions. Just do it. Okay. Just trust me. It's my practice. I know you're the office manager. You like to just write the checks. Okay. Just do what I say. Is that something that Donna would say? Okay, whatever you say, Charlie, if you ask me to do it, I'll do it without asking any questions. Is that the type of person that Donna is? And Robert said, no, she's not that type of person. Of course, she's going to want to know where these checks going, why are they going to Katie McVanoa? She doesn't work here. She's going to want to know the story. So that whole defense, if they're going to try to use that defense, that Charlie just told her to just do this because she's this poor, simple grandmother who just listens to her son to do whatever she wants, whatever he wants. No, that's not who Donna is at all. Okay. Now, initially, she didn't like Dan Markel, but obviously, as the divorce continued, then she began to hate Dan Markel, and she really, really hated him. And that's what Robert said very clearly. She just, 2014, just hated him. And Donna did speak at this point. She was still speaking to Robert Adelson, and they would talk. And sometimes they would talk about the divorce. And what he remembers that sticks out in his mind, that Danny was depoting Wendy to death. Seems like taking a lot of depositions. Okay, maybe discovery, too much for her. And that's just something that sticks out in his mind. Now, also, he found out that the way that it was broken to Dan Markel that Wendy was leaving him and decided to take the kids with her also was when he was about to get on stage to give a speech. That is when she decided to break the news to Dan right when he's about to get up and speak. So they thought that was a way, that the way to break the news to Dan Markel right when he was about to get up to speak. And he was asked, like, what do you think? What was Donna excited about that, or did she say, no, that's not nice. Let's do it in a nice way? No, not at all. Okay, so Donna sounded very pleased that that's how he was going to find out. Okay, and then obviously he said that she was very involved with the divorce. Donna cared much more about the divorce than Charlie. So in case the defense here is going to be that Charlie was really one who cared so much about Wendy being able to relocate, he said no. Charlie cares about go-karts, cares about boats. He doesn't care about Wendy's divorce or where Wendy's going to end up relocating. Now, Charlie may want to help Donna because Donna has a problem, so ask Charlie and maybe Charlie will take care of it for her. But if you have to ask who would be more concerned for Wendy relocating, it would be Donna, not Charlie. Okay. So he also said that Donna was fixated upon Wendy taking the Miami job offer. Remember this job offer that came from this firm, and it came up a lot. She really, really wanted Wendy to take that job. But turns out that they didn't want to hire Wendy at a certain point. It was too much. Maybe it was after the murder, before the murder. They ended up taking the offer off of the table. Okay. Now, another part, before we get to the video, before we get to the clip that I'm about to play for you, one more part, which was very interesting, was there's a big question about this case that's been going on for years. And that was, did Wendy try to make Jeff Lacasse be the fall guy? This is a question that has caused so much debate in this Adelson trial over, the past 10 years. Was Wendy trying to make Jeff Lacasse And if you're just joining this case now, you don't know much about Jeff Lacoste. Jeff Lacoste is Wendy's boyfriend after the divorce of Dan Markel. And the relationship is very, very interesting in how they kind of broke up and didn't break up. And you'll hear about it. But the question is, was Jeff supposed to be the fall guy? And this is just another thing that gets thrown in to this question. And the reason is that Robert testified that all of a sudden Wendy texts him about this new boyfriend that she has, Jeff Lacoste. Maybe it's Lacoste, by the way. So he gets this text from Wendy saying, I got this new boyfriend, and was very odd to him because Wendy was not the type to share information, definitely with Robert, about her love interests, about her boyfriends. That was not her type of thing to do at all. And on top of that, when she texts him, this is my new boyfriend, and look, he's around with the kids and everything, she says, don't tell mom and dad about this. So that just struck him as very, very odd. Number one, she never tells him about her different boyfriends that she's going through. And number two, to not tell her parents, she's in constant contact with Donna. So it was very, very odd. Okay, so now you can do with what you want, and maybe make the case that you see that this is another reason that, or another proof that Wendy was trying to use Jeff to be the fall guy. And in fact, what was interesting about this is that Robert said at some point, as the news was coming out, he remembered, and he was talking to law enforcement, he talked to the FBI. He was thinking himself, maybe he was the boyfriend, maybe it was this new boyfriend, maybe it was Jeff Lacoste. And he even called the police and said, I forgot to tell you that she just had this new boyfriend. Maybe the new boyfriend did it. So that is still up for discussion, and it's just another part of this puzzle that you're going to have to figure out what to do with it. Okay, so, and that was also by the end of June of 2014. It was right near the murder when all these text messages happened. Okay, so now let's get to the part which I think is, this is the 10 minutes which we've never heard before, and this can really, when this was going on, it's like, these are bombs. He's just dropping bombs after bombs, and this is almost like the last 10 minutes. The last 10 minutes of the direct examination was, all this stuff was leading up to this, and here we go. So just take a listen and see what he said. I'm going to speed it up just a drop on 1.5, and if it's too fast, you just slow it down. But it's about 10 minutes. It shouldn't be too fast. They talk slow, but here we go.
All right. So how did you first hear about Dan Markel's murder?
I heard the day after the shooting occurred. So that would be Saturday, July 19. I was at a meeting in Chicago, and I think I got a phone call first, and then I was in a meeting, and so I just said, can I call you later? And then I got a text message shortly thereafter, like right before 10 in the morning. It said, tragedy here, please call.
I know these from Donna Adelson?
Yes.
Okay. So were you able to call her that morning from the conference in Chicago?
Yeah. So I walked out and went to the hotel lobby and just hit call.
Okay. And tell us about that conversation with her.
So it's one of those moments that you'll just remember forever. So I remember being in the lobby of the Westin, and I assumed something terrible had happened, and I wasn't ready for it. She said, so we just want to let you know that Danny's been shot, and they took him to the hospital, but he didn't make it. And it didn't make any sense. And I probably asked a few medical questions, and they said they're driving up to go help Wendy, and we'll talk to you later. We can't talk now.
Okay. Was she crying in that conversation?
Not in the conversation.
Sir?
No, she was not.
Okay.
It was very matter of fact.
Did she ever give you any further detail that weekend about how he'd been shot, or other than just Danny was shot and he didn't make it?
I think it was the next day. So the only really other time that I spoke with him that weekend, I was in the airport going home, like Sunday afternoon. So it was definitely the next day. And it was the first time I could actually have any kind of conversation. And one of the things that she told me is, it bothered me, but I didn't have any other details about. But she said that someone went to the front door and said, "Are you Dan Markel?" and then shot him. And then I said, "Well, how could you know that? Who's telling you that?" And she said, "Well, that's just what they're telling us." And
okay. So she said someone told her that someone knocked on Danny's door, said, "Are you Dan Markel?" He said yes, and the shooter shot him.
That's the story I heard. And later we found out that wasn't what happened. But that story bothered me a lot because there's only one way you could hear that story.
There's only one way that you can hear that story. Well, what's the one way that you can hear that story if it's the day after the murder? What is the one way? How are you supposed to know that? They didn't arrest Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia yet. So how is she supposed to know that?
Was she crying when she told you that information?
No.
You mentioned earlier that law enforcement contacted you after Dan Markel's murder. Did they contact you to try to see if you knew any information?
Yeah, they came to our house. I was already at work, and so they talked to my wife. It had to be a Wednesday or Thursday, so I was already at work.
Was this your house in New York?
Yes.
Okay. And did you end up talking to law enforcement and answering their questions, letting them know what you knew?
Yeah, they came to my office the next day, and we with 2 agents, and we had an interview.
Okay. After that conversation you said it was the FBI earlier, right?
Yes.
Okay. After that conversation with the FBI, did Donna Adelson ever say anything to you about having talked to law enforcement or the FBI?
It was either that afternoon or the next day, but and she called me and said, just want to let you know, if the police come around, don't talk to them.
Okay, so she told you not to talk to law enforcement.
Correct.
Did you let her know that you already had talked to law
And I
enforcement?
said I already did.
What did she say to that?
She said, "Oh, well, you don't know anything anyway."
You don't know anything anyway?
Correct.
Well, you don't know anything anyway. I mean, and what do we know? Does somebody else know something? Like, we all don't know anything. What does that mean even? So that's another red flag.
Was that an unusual statement coming from your mother?
Yeah, everything that week was unusual, but I clearly didn't know anything, but I wasn't going to not talk to the FBI if they show up at my house.
How did you respond? Let me ask you this. After the murder of Dan Markel, did Donna Adelson seem curious about who killed Dan Markel?
No.
Was there a complete lack of curiosity?
Yeah, nobody seemed curious.
Did you actually ever ask her, like after the murder, like, hey, like, what do you think happened?
Yeah, and the conversations were kind of rerouted, or that was certainly discouraged. And it was probably like maybe sometime like mid-August, when I finally had a chance to ask and say, what is going on? This was not a small event. This was getting a lot of notoriety. And I said, what do you guys think happened? And she had said, I don't know and I don't care. It doesn't concern me.
Was that out of character for her to not be curious and not be asking some questions?
Yeah, it was an unsolved murder of my former brother-in-law, like someone that we all know very well. If it was like some neighborhood gossip, people would be interested. This was like national interest, and nobody had any curiosity about who did this to Danny.
Is a person you mentioned that not only is it your brother-in-law, but it was like national news at that point as well.
Yes.
And regardless of it being national news or not, is a person dying from gun violence an extremely unusual thing to happen in your family?
Yeah, to this day, Danny's the only person that I know who's died from gun violence or been a victim of gun violence. So it's unique in that manner.
What would your mom, Donna Adelson, do if you did try to ask her any more about Danny's murder after that?
It wasn't a subject for discussion. It would be rerouted, or it was just not a subject to discuss.
When you say rerouted, do you mean like changing the subject?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fast forward to 2016. Do you remember in May of 2016 when Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera were arrested?
Yeah, I do. I actually saw it in the OR lounge. Someone told me about it. It had to be like a Wednesday, and
you were in the operating room.
Yeah,
lounge?
it was
someone
the lounge.
told you about
it.
it.
It was someone else, because
Okay.
Stories like this people see on Twitter or such.
And this is going to be the most significant part. This interaction that he's about to have with Donna Adelson. This can really, if we had to knock it down to 2 minutes, this is the next 2 minutes. That's been the most important, impactful testimony so far. So here we go.
I remember someone telling me, like, I need to hear about, that the case, because it's more than one person had followed it. And, I saw it, and then, that was on the 26th. And I remember the dates because our anniversary is on the 28th of May. My wife and I were like, should we call them? Like they arrested some guy who killed Danny. And
When you say them, you mean like, should we
my
call
parents.
my parents? And
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it was big news that even people you work with were seeing that there were finally some arrests made.
right.
Okay. And that was 2 days before your anniversary. You said?
Yes.
Okay. So did you and your wife eventually talk to your parents?
We did. Like, we thought, like, should we call them? And we figured, if they wanted to call us, they would call us, and then they didn't. And so we figured, well, they'll call us on our anniversary, and so we can just sit tight. And I'm sure it's pretty stressful. And this guy was arrested in Miami, and so they called us on our anniversary, which was the 28th.
Okay. So that was 2 days after the arrest, I think.
So 2 days after Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia get arrested for the murder of Dan Markel, he's waiting for a phone call from his parents. Like, hey, did you hear the news? And they also have his anniversary 2 days later. So 2 days later, they have an anniversary. And then listen what happens.
2 days after I found out. Yes.
2 days after you found out. Thank you. So on the 28th, did you talk to Donna Adelson?
Yes.
All right. And when she called you, was she telling you the good news that Danny's killers were arrested?
No, I just called us for anniversary, and wished us well, and had some small talk for a bit. I kind of let it go for a little bit. This was not small news. And so I finally broached the topic and said, they found the guy, they arrested someone who killed Danny. There's no response. And I said it, at least 2 or 3 times that, they arrested, they made an arrest. They got the guy who killed Danny. And then her response was, I've got to go.
And then did she hang up the phone after that?
Yes.
And did you ever talk to her about it again ever after that?
No.
Just a second.
I've got to go. That was her response. And now listen to the just one more question, which just nail in the coffin.
Other than, her reaching out for happy birthdays, happy anniversaries, that kind of thing, was that the last conversation you had with her?
That was the last time I spoke to her.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
That was the last time they spoke. Last time they spoke was when he brought up, hey, good news. They arrested the killers. They arrested Secretary Garcia. They arrested these two guys who killed Danny Markel. I got to go. And then radio silence. That's it. No more conversations between Robert Adelson and Donna Adelson. So, yes, as you can see for yourself, that may be all the prosecution needs, but that's not going to be all that they have, because there are going to be some more days of trial now. But one more witness who testified was Officer Brannon, which was also, again, this is why a lot of people are saying Wendy is absolutely involved. And this is type of evidence that you do not need anything that she said on the stand for. So this is beyond the immunity agreement. So they could use this type of information to indict her, to charge her. Okay. But again, the question is, how strong is this? But it's definitely something that really, really makes you feel uneasy. And that is when she turned on Trescott to go buy this alcohol, the Officer Brandon was the one who put yellow tape and blocked off the street. So you couldn't get down Trescott. Now, what do you normally do when you come down a street that you're not expecting for there to be any sort of police action there? You're not expecting it to be blocked off. When you come down a street that you're very normal, you always go down the street and it's blocked off. All of a sudden you start you slow down, you look around. Maybe there's a police officer, you roll down the window. Is everything okay? What's going on here? Oh, my friend lives there, or this and that. Some curiosity or some just slowing down and okay, you pull away. It's blocked off. But Officer Brannon testified that no, when Wendy Adelson turned on the street to Trescott, she turned down, very deliberate, turned around and left, as almost like she was expecting that. That was the inference. That's the fair, reasonable inference that was being made. So did Wendy know? Did Wendy know? And that's why she was just driving down with Trescott to check it out, to see whether it actually did happen? Well, that is why a lot of people feel that Wendy absolutely knew about this, whether she was part of the plan or not, but she knew about it. And that's why she was driving down Trescott that day. And that's why every other car that went down there was acted differently than when she pulled down Trescott. And that was the testimony of Officer Brannon. So that was how we ended the day today. We will see what happens tomorrow. Join us back here tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., bright and early, for the continued testimony. Maybe we're going to have Charlie Adelson tomorrow. That would be interesting testimony, have Charlie Adelson take the stand. Maybe we'll hear about the bump. Maybe we'll hear about some other recorded, maybe the jailhouse snitch. Who knows? So definitely join us tomorrow for the continuation of this very important trial, 9 a.m. We will be live streaming it. Thank you all. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and like, and we will see you next time.